Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason Fennell with DreamBox Learning, and I have Mary Kemper from Coppell ISD with us. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Mary, so you can share your what, why, and how of K-5 math intervention. Appreciate you all joining us today.
All right. I'm going to ask the obvious question. Hey, Jason, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Title screen, the what, why, and how of K-5 math intervention. Okay, I want to tell everybody first off, I will give you my contact info and access to everything I've created. So no worries if you feel like you missed something. We can always chat later. I believe in sharing everything for the good of all of our kids. And I also appreciate your grace for any technology issues that we might have. So here we go. I'm the math director in Coppell. We have 14 K-8 schools, 2 high schools, a new 9th grade campus, about 13,000 students, and 1,300 staff. I wanted to give you a little background on our district, but the most important thing is that we teach public school kids in Texas, as do many of you, and we're trying to navigate teaching in a remote, virtual, blended environment like the rest of you, and doing the best we can with what we've got. Okay, this is me. Here is my email address and my Twitter handle and my digital portfolio website. Reach out to me for anything, and I'm happy to chat math with anybody. And I always love a good thought partner. I'll share that again later. So we are charged with providing a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all students. That's a heavy ask. So what do we guarantee? Well, we had to identify a few years ago what it is that we're going to guarantee, and then how are we going to prove that we're guaranteeing those things. So in K-5 math, we have a set of high priority learning standards. Those high priority standards can be thought of in these topics: counting and recognizing whole numbers, comparing and ordering numbers, composing and decomposing numbers in terms of place value, operations with whole numbers and decimals, and operations with fractions. Now, I would hope that everyone would agree that if all kids who left our K-5 system had a strong understanding of these things, that they would be better off in terms of their math learning, but also they'd be able to solve problems in measurement and geometry, probability, personal finance, and all those things. Also, when asked where do kids generally struggle, it's numeracy and number and operation. We know through lots of research that a numeracy focus for intervention will not only give us our biggest bang for our buck, but will set up our kids for the greatest success. So that's what we did. We identified our priority standards being rooted in numeracy, aligned to our standards here in Texas. But now we need to know, how do we know if the kids know these things? And what do we do if they don't? That's where our intervention system comes in. So we have this set of priority standards that say this is what we guarantee all kids will do. But if they don't, we have an intervention system to help support them to get there. We also believe that all kids can learn at high levels, so we provide this for everyone. So our system begins with universal screening. Now we have a big program that shoots out a big fancy spreadsheet in a matter of words. But we also have universal screening documents that were created in-house and translated and analyzed statistically by a psychometrician that's based on the work of Kathy Richardson and John Vanderwall, so that the teachers can screen all kids to determine if they are at risk in terms of mathematics. And those universal screeners are aligned to those high priority standards. Do our kids have a strong understanding of numeracy or not? After we have that universal screening done for those kids who are at risk, well, ultimately all kids would be great, but for those kids at risk, we need to set a goal. So what is it that our kids can do, or what are we going to strive to do very specifically and measurably in terms of intervention? Over the years, I have refined those goals, and for K-5, there's 41 of them. For our 41 goals, the teachers select one of them. So no longer do my teachers say the goal is problem solving or word problems or math facts. We're very specific in what those goals are, because then we have a succinct set of intervention materials that align to those goals. So if a child is struggling in a certain area and we need to provide intervention in order to create that guaranteed and viable curriculum for that child, then we will intervene in that way. Along the way, we'll monitor the progress of the kid toward the goal. All of this really tightly held, because that's what makes it the guaranteed system. Now, throughout the process, should the monitoring of the progress show that the child is not accelerating the learning and is not going to catch up in a matter of words, then we either change the intervention or refine the goal and continue. So I have 3 examples for you today of really specifically starting with a child and artifacts of that child's learning through goal setting, intervention, all that good stuff. So I'm hoping that this will help paint a picture. Now, again, I'm sharing examples, and at the end, I'll make sure that you have access to all of the resources that we have that are also available in Spanish. So here you go. I'm going to talk over this video when I play it because there's not a lot, well, the child doesn't talk, but I want to make sure that you can hear, and it's a little muffled. So this is the child completing one of the universal screeners. This specific task down at the bottom that the child is going to complete is addition of 2 two-digit numbers. So here we go. Solve the problem 45 plus 19. So I just said solve the problem 45 plus 19. So now if the video is jumpy, it's okay, because really we're just looking at what the child's written. So I want you to notice the child drawing what appears to be base 10 blocks. There are 4 rods and 5 ones to represent the 45, plus 1 rod and 9 ones to represent the 19. So the child has drawn out a model for 45 plus 19. And now she's going to add 19 plus 5. So she took the 5 from the 45, and she's going to add that to the 19 first. But she doesn't know what that is. So she counts on, starting with 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So she knows 19 plus 5 is 24. And we all know what she needs to do next. What she needs to do is add the 40 to the 24. Okay, she wrote a 5, discovers it's wrong, and erases it. Now again, we're looking for 40 plus 24. Now she draws a 7. Marks that out back to drawing of rods, and she draws this time 5 rods. When we think, wait, she should be adding 40 plus 24. So the answer is supposed to be 64, but she gets 74 because of those 5 rods. Now, I know that this is completely out of context, and this is one data point on this standard for this child. But let's just agree to look at this as if this was typical of this child, and then we'll move on from there for the sake of conversation. So if this was typical of the child, then let's say, based on all the other data points, we look at the standard in which that question was attempting to assess. The child should add up to 4 two-digit numbers and subtract 2-digit numbers using mental strategies and algorithms based on knowledge of place value. So we saw some pieces of place value there, but she's not accurate all the time. So here's our goal. The goal is the learner will recall basic facts, add and subtract within 20 with automaticity, and add up to 4 two-digit numbers. So as you can see, this is the language of the standard 2.4a and 2.4b from our Texas TEKS. And then it goes on to say with accuracy 80% of the time. Now in our district, we deem 80% as the goal. And so there's the measurable word. And then we also want her to do it by this specific date. So we would sit around the table with the educators, administrators, whoever needs to be there to discuss the child's math education goal setting, and we'd get that goal set. Hopefully the child would be there too. So by a certain date. So we have the goal set, and then it's time to look at the progress monitoring. So no, we're not ready to monitor progress yet, but it's good to know where we're going with this. So I've created this set of progress monitoring tools. So at the top of the tool is the goal, the same goal that we saw before. It's all completely aligned. This falls under the operations with whole numbers and decimals topic. And then you can see that first progress monitoring probe asks the students to recall basic facts. So let's make sure the child knows basic facts in terms of automaticity according to our standards. And then here are some problems to solve, some addition problems and subtraction problems. Now, that's when I would measure the percent accuracy. Now, every, say, week or however often I determine that I'm going to measure the progress, then I can come back and use a set of parallel probes to determine if the child is able to complete that goal with accuracy 80% of the time. Now, on the back or second page of this progress monitoring tool, that's when the teacher would draw a graph. In all honesty and transparency, when I was first setting all of this up, I really wanted to go with some running records. I wanted some annotation of the teacher's observation of the students. But our intervention services department was really adamant that we had some type of graph, like the reading graph. They just kept pulling me back to reading. And I said, well, math isn't like reading. There isn't this line, this goal. And then they just kept pressing me and pressing me. And so I wondered, what if we did have a line? What if we did have a graph? What if we could measure the student's accuracy related to a very specific topic? So again, I was creating this completely from scratch, and I just decided, yeah, so let's say the child could do it this 10 or 20% of the time, and I wanted to have the child at 80% accuracy after 4 weeks. Well, I could draw that goal line, and then I could draw the line of how the child is doing on these progress monitoring probes each week. That was the best I could do at the time, and I thought it made a lot of sense, and it was measurable. So that would be how I would monitor the progress of this child. But now let's think, what is the intervention going to look like? So thanks to plenty of time in my office the last few months, I created these intervention lessons. So this would be the intervention lesson that aligned to that goal. So the lessons are written so that you could do them multiple times. You could repeat them and revisit them depending on how often you're able to pull the student for intervention. So first, for example, maybe you could select up to 4 number cards and model how to find the sum. And then maybe you could shuffle and randomly select the cards and model how to find the difference. And then there's some practice, because sometimes the student needs to practice the work while you're intervening with other students. Now, to make it as tightly held of a system as I could, I actually created the number cards and the basic fact cards for the teachers so that they could spend their time with the kids intervening and not designing content. And then I knew that every child receiving intervention on this standard would have access to high quality content without any worries. It would be a tightly held system. So I could pull the students either on Zoom in small groups or in person. I could have this assign the students tasks to work to practice this or that using these cards or using this practice. But another tool that we have at our disposal now is DreamBox. And so I could say, you know what, I'm going to assign you this very specific lesson aligned to this very specific standard on purpose, because this is where you're working toward this goal. And so I wanted you to see, like in the very beginning, for this specific standard, the kids are asked to click 2 numbers that make 50. That was just an example. Later on, they need to use this open number line to find the difference. So there's multiple modalities for the kids to practice related to this specific goal, all in this tightly held system. Okay, so that was the first example. I'm going to hand it over to Jason, and he's going to give a little bit of info, and then I'll come back for the second and third example.
And thank you, Mary. I'm just going to give a quick FYI about DreamBox. So many, I'm going to check, is that audio coming through?
No audio, but we see the video.
Okay, that'll work. So districts turn to DreamBox just as Mary and Coppell ISD did when they're looking for building conceptual understanding, filling in unfinished learning, and having a resource that's fully translated into Spanish. And as this video is demonstrating, you hear adaptive learning in a variety of ways. We have all heard it as a former math teacher myself. DreamBox is different in that it responds based on how students are showing and responding with the virtual manipulatives. So it's in kind to Waze GPS based on traffic conditions or whatever else you face while you drive. You're going to have a different experience each time. And so the DreamBox difference is catering to keeping students in their proximal zone of learning so that they are getting the best experience to fill in gaps, to fill in that unfinished learning, and then allowing productive struggle based on how they're demonstrating what they know. As we all know in math, it's not just did they get it right or wrong, but how did they get there? And so with that, the commercial is over, and we're going to turn it back over to Mary.
All right. Okay, example 2. That was a great break, Jason, by the way. Okay, so this one, this is another example. Side note, I know these children, they're mine. I also know that Mother of the Year, I have trouble distinguishing their silhouette when they were really little on these old math videos that I made of them. But the good news is the older one is right-handed and the younger one is left-handed, so I can tell who it is. So this is my younger one. And on this student recording sheet for the universal screener, she's going to do problem 2 at the bottom, and I will say a number and she needs to write that number. So I'll repeat the number to make sure you can hear it.
I'm going to say a number, you write the number. 21.
21.
70.
70.
112.
112.
106.
106. Okay, so I hope you noticed 2 things. First, we'll start with the last one. On 106, she wrote 106. The 6 was reversed, but it was still 106. And at this level, we're completely okay with that. That is a different type of intervention, not the type of numeracy intervention that we're focused on right now. Now, 112, she wrote 1012 for 112, 1012. Okay, so let's just, again, for the sake of discussion, consider this very typical of this child. So that task was aligned to this standard: use objects, pictures, expanded standard form to represent numbers up to 120. So here is the goal that is aligned to that, specifically 1.2 B and C from our math standards. The learner will compose and decompose numbers, represent numbers up to 120. She'll do this with accuracy 80% of the time by this date. I hope that you see some consistency, that our goals are written very similarly, all 41 of them. So again, here's the progress monitoring tool, and it should look a little bit familiar. So we start with the goal at the top. This comes under composing and decomposing with place value. And here is the task in which we'll collect the data. First, we'll show the student a pile of base 10 blocks, specifically 5 10s and 17 1s. I tell the teacher exactly what to show the child. That's what is helping our tightly held system stay strong. And then we say, how many? Then we show the student a pile of base 10 blocks with 3 10s and 12 1s, and we ask how many. And it continues. There are specific images I want them to show. And then this continues with the other progress monitoring probes through our system of progress monitoring, that is. And then again, we'll draw a graph of their response in terms of accuracy, and we'll be able to compare that to what our goal is. And then again, there's an intervention for this. So one option is have some number cards and cups and counters or beans, and we shuffle, randomly select a number card, and we use cups and counters or beans to model the number. We put 10 counters in each cup, make a 10, and then counters on the table represent ones. Again, we're building that conceptual understanding, and we're starting with that concrete representation. Then there's another learn option and a third learn option that point to some number cards and some base 10 blocks before the child is able to practice, potentially on their own, depending on the age maturity of the kiddo. So again, to keep our tightly held system, I created the content specifically for these activities, including these building number cards to 120. So let's say the child is ready to practice, or I want the child to get some additional practice outside of the time with me, or in a way that the child can see the content a little bit differently. And I could aim that child directly to a lesson on DreamBox. This is hopefully parallel to the idea of the beans and the cups, where on the right you'd see the 17 loose items or the 17 beans, and you want to know how many boxes we're going to put them in. Well, clearly we would take 10 from the loose items, and that would make one box, so 1 10 and 7 1s. Later on, they could see it given in this way, and they're saying, well, if we have 8 boxes of 10 each and 5 loose items, how many altogether are there? And they would have to type the total of 85. So it scaffolds their understanding, so they can get back to understanding that 112 is 1 1 2. Okay, one more example. Are we still good to go for one more example?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, number 3. This is the final video, back to the right-handed kid. And on this one, it's about fractions. So let's see what she does. And again, I will speak over it to make sure you can hear it.
I will say a fraction, you write the fraction.
So I say a fraction, she writes the fraction.
5 thirds.
I said 5 thirds.
3 1/4.
I said 3 1/4.
6 sixths.
Okay, can you see that was 6 6. The 3 over 1 was supposed to be 3 1/4. So that was the one where she made the error. So let's say, for sake of argument, that this is typical behavior for this child, or typical math understanding for this child in terms of writing fractions, mixed numbers, or improper. So this question, this task, was aligned to this standard. To represent equivalent fractions with denominators of 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8 using a variety of objects and pictorial models, including number lines. So I know that these standards that I'm sharing are broad, and I'm talking about one little piece of it, but I hope that you get the big picture of what I'm sharing today, which is a general aim towards this intervention system. So let's say I set the goal, or we set the goal as the learner will represent equivalent fractions. So again, this wasn't really about equivalent fractions, it was about writing the fraction, but for the sake of argument, let's continue and know that that was the best video I had in my photo roll. Okay, so progress monitoring. So here we go to the progress monitoring of this. So let's say, again, it's about equivalent fractions. I hope that you can see that there's a link to the word these, use these equivalent fractions, because I also provide these in a larger format for the kiddos to see. This is just a reference for the teachers. So, and they'll explain why the fractions are equivalent, find a fraction equivalent to 1/2, and again, parallel sets of probes that lead all the way to tracking the learner progress to determine if the child is making that sufficient progress, accelerating the instruction to meet that 80%. So for the intervention in our tightly held system, let's say I give fraction models and and crayons or colored pencils, and the child, or I model how to name a fraction, shade an area model, divide the model into smaller pieces. And again, a lot of intervention in this, in sitting with or through Zoom with the children, and then giving them an opportunity to practice on their own or with a partner. So again, tightly held system, here are the fractions I want you to model, here are the fraction cards. So let's continue here. There's the number lines. Well, I might say, you know what, let's jump on DreamBox and let's see what you got over there. This is about how many dimes are there if you have $2. So this is really getting into some good ratio math. But then later on in the lessons for this standard, the child is allowed to choose whether they want to model the fraction 9/6 with money or time. And this was fantastic use of visuals here, and it gave the children an opportunity to dive in and think about fractions in a little bit of a different way. So there is at the bottom of this screen, if you're interested in digging into the universal screeners, goals, progress monitoring tools, or intervention lessons, all in English and Spanish, they're posted on my digital portfolio there on Bulb. I also am thinking about how to make them replicable in a remote environment, and so I've utilized some digital tools in that way. But again, thank you for your grace that this is an ongoing work, an ongoing process to try to do its best, knowing that we need to provide that guaranteed and viable curriculum for all kids. I think that's my last slide before I go back over to the DreamBox one. There you go, Jason.
Yeah, and I also wanted to jump in, Mary.
Oh, sure.
For some reason, my camera is not working. I'm so sorry. This is Debbie Thompson with DreamBox Learning also. But we had a question about, will all of the progress monitoring materials be available on that particular link that you just shared, Mary?
Yes, and since we have a little bit of time, do y'all want me to show what that looks like?
Do we have time, Jason? Okay, Jason said, I think he's on mute, but it looks like he's saying yes.
I'm sorry.
It's
The
okay.
famous
I love
2020
it.
line. We have blocked till 2 o'clock, so we still have a good 29 minutes. There is a question that came in from Melinda Salmon. How do you determine if students are placed in intervention based on your universal screeners?
How do we determine if they're placed? Like, if they're placed at all, or where they're placed? Oh, is there, I think I know her question.
And she said,
we have a cut score. So let me show you this. So yeah, and that's what our psychometrician analyzed for us, is whether or not our cut score was losing any kids, or if were we intervening too grossly or too acutely, all that good stuff. And so I always depend on my teachers. I say, what are you seeing in the classroom, and does this result of this universal screener truly align to what you're seeing in the classroom? The teacher's in the driver's seat. Now that relieves a lot of stress from them in terms of like, do I need to make an excuse for the program, or do I believe this is actual factual data? And then the cut is 10 out of 20. I'm gonna say 10 out of 20, I can check. Okay, so this is the collection that link brings you to. And these are pages. These with bricks are the universal screener, goal setting, progress monitoring, and intervention. So the universal screening page will bring you links to the documents. There's a little video to help you annotate. I also put them into Pear Deck in case you're a Pear Deck person. But yes, there is a cut score, and as you access the screener documents, it has an explanation page for the teachers. So that's a really great question. These are the intervention lessons available in English and Spanish and formatted for remote learning by one of my fantastic digital learning coaches. Are there any other questions? Are we good?
There was another person was wanting to know if they could see that link again. I think they just missed.
Oh, sure.
And I should paste that somewhere.
I just pasted it.
Perfect.
Y'all are testing my GoToWebinar skills.
Mary, you and I have talked before that DreamBox is a piece of your intervention toolbox, obviously. Why do you say yes to DreamBox?
Well, there's some things that are make it or break it in our district. One is it has to be available in Spanish. We have to provide high quality instruction through our dual language immersion program. And should we have not chosen a program that was also available in Spanish, we'd need to provide a parallel. And we wanted to provide the consistency for our educators. So that's a big thing for us. I needed something that was aligned to the standards in Texas and that my teachers could be in control of. I did not want, I'll tell you what I didn't want. I didn't want something, and I did not have all the say. We had a great committee of administrators and educators around the table to help decide. But one thing that was important was that I wanted the teachers to be in control. I didn't want the kids to sit down and feel like, welcome to the system, take a big test. Every time you log on after a certain date, take a big test. I wanted it to be fluid. And so the fact that it's fluid and there's ongoing data collection happening as the smart engine knows the kid was really important, because I felt like then you could get on, the kids could get on the system, utilize DreamBox, play DreamBox, and as they play and learn, data just constantly be collected rather than stop and have a test.
Definitely. I think our kids are tired of testing, especially now with COVID, and screen time has to be meaningful so that it's not, let's go sit down, like you said, let's go do a program. And I actually bartered with my middle daughter. I said, if you want an hour for Minecraft and Roblox, you have to give me 20 minutes of DreamBox. And 40 minutes later, she found me and she said, I am mad. I'm like, what are you mad about? She's like, I lost track of time. And as a former math teacher, I was like, yes. And I did that in front of her, and she laughed and smirked, and she's like, I was engaged, and it was like a game, and it pushed her. And so definitely.
You know, there's one more thing. We are working on community-based accountability, and we want to show growth. And so we needed something to help collect data that would show growth of our kiddos. So that was pretty important to us.
Definitely. And while I know many of you attending are current users and those that are new, as a reminder, DreamBox is completely driven by students completing lessons. And so lesson completion, 5 lessons a week, just as we pray we're back in school sometime, 5 days a week, that will drive all of our reporting. Students can see a year's worth of growth. for our Texas attendees, that will also feed data for our STAR predictor and House Bill 3 requirements as well for your K2 progress measure. And it's all driven by students completing lessons, which is learning by doing, not sit and get.
Right, and I also recommend, or I don't want to say require, so I won't, but the recommended use of DreamBox, I follow the DreamBox recommendation, and so that's what I say is that we shoot for 5 lessons a week, and I love that it's that is dependent upon, and the time it takes for them to do that is dependent upon the age of the kiddo. So it's reasonable for the younger primary early learners to complete 5 because based on how long that would take. And I also tell my teachers, it's not 5 or nothing. So the first step is I want you to get on. If my kids are completing 4 a week, I want 4 a week instead of it rather than 0. So aim for 5. Let's see what we can do in terms of our small group instruction and in terms of intervention and acceleration and enrichment and all that good stuff. But I have the belief that let's aim for that. I also work with my campus administrators on the teacher dashboard because I really want my teachers to log in to see how the kids are doing. That's gonna be the best way that they can monitor their data, is that the teachers log in and see that.
Definitely. Mary, I know we focus on K5 today. A question came in with the tools that you have on your website. Can those be expanded to grades 6 through 8, or do you have different resources for middle school?
I had some stuff for middle school. I kind of I don't want to give an excuse. We just don't have what we have for K5 at middle school right now, but 100%. Like, there's no reason why that 5th grade content aligned to the 5th grade standards could not be used with 6th grade kids, because if they're intervening at prerequisite skills, absolutely. And then nothing would stop anybody from taking my system, our system, and creating parallel at the 6, 7, 8 level. I also wanted to point out that I've now expanded it to include pre-K for a few reasons. Number one is our kinder kiddos receiving intervention may need access to that pre-K content according to the pre-K guidelines in Texas. Pre-K teachers maybe, but they probably wouldn't be intervening on level. The kinder teachers would be intervening at the pre-K level. The second reason is because of House Bill 3. The pre-K2, pre-K3 focus. This is my goal that our school board adopted in the summer, which was a pre-K3, and I'm just doing pre-K5, intervention system and professional learning and follow-up on that. So I've gone down to pre-K, and everybody else is welcome to go 6, 8.
And Mary, you also talked about how you had some options for that virtual or remote learning also for that universal screener. Is that correct? Is that something you talked about?
Oh, sure. So I set it up in Pear Deck, which is an add-on to Google Slides that we happen to have in our district. I didn't really mention before, in terms of school funding, I wanted to create a system that was sustainable and it was ours forever. And that's why I was creating this content, because I don't have to wait for anything else other than the fact that we always have it. So we don't know if we'll always have Pear Deck because it's a purchased add-on. But there is a link there to the beginning of the year screeners, and I'm currently working on the middle of the year ones and end of the year ones, so that you could give those screeners in a remote environment and watch the kids do the math. Yeah, that was the online portion there, and then the online portion of the. I'm clicking on the screen and y'all can't see it. Sorry, it's my first webinar. The intervention system, intervention resources that were created by my digital learning coach, Casey Kemp, are linked there too.
Perfect, because I knew that's with the likelihood of more kids having to go virtual for a little bit. I knew that was a big question. So thank you for answering that.
Sure.
And Mary, Kelly saying is commented, she loves Pear Deck, so if you have some pieces that you're willing to share, she'd love to see them.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. So if you go to the website that I was showing over here in my portfolio and you go to universal screening and scroll down, these screeners in the middle of the screen, these are linked to Google Slides of the questions that can utilize the Pear Deck add-on.
Excellent.
And I just want to say, because I know there's so many people on here that are thinking the same thing. Thank you for being so willing to just share all of this hard work, because we know with what you've done, with what all your teachers have done, this is tremendous. And to me, this is just as another added value of the partnership that we have with you, and trying to increase that partnership to teachers across the state of Texas. Because as you said before, I mean, we're all in this together, and our big passion is to help kids, help teachers, and just move everybody forward. I don't know if some of you have read lately, they were talking about how math scores across the United States have just dropped significantly as they were looking at NDVA scores across the United States, and that math was the one. Reading maybe had just a little bit of drop, but math had a bigger drop. And of course, a lot of it is the sequential aspect of mathematics and trying to continue to move that on. So I think this, the solutions that you're providing to everyone about intervention and intervening and being very specific and targeted at those goals and helping the students move forward is huge. So I just want to say thank you so much. I know everybody else on here is saying this is fabulous, and they're just probably thinking, oh my goodness, what else can we do to help to help get more, like someone else said, 6-8 stuff. So whoever does 6-8, they need to share with the rest of us too. So
Well, I'm happy to share. I'm hoping many of you have personal professional goals, but I have a great opportunity and great platform through all of my great partnerships. I really believe that all kids can learn math at high levels, and I think that all kids, doesn't matter where they live, they should have access to teachers that believe they can do it, and teachers who should have access to high quality content and the support that they need. And that support is both that emotional, mental, positive attitude, as well as the content. I am the sunshine pumper in the room, and I do really believe that we can all do this. So there you go. Happy to share.
Mary, we have a few more questions. When do teachers do the intervention? Is it within their blocks?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Okay, so let me talk about before remote instruction. And before remote instruction, our campuses set up their master schedule to have intervention time. And we were moving toward sharing kids. And so like Jason, let's say I had one student who needed to work on a specific goal, and you also had a student who needed to work on that goal. Well, maybe I would pull your student over here with me, with my student, and we'd work together, and then vice versa. Maybe I would share some kids with you. There's a lot of benefits of that, obviously, the collegiality and camaraderie, but also building relationships and working in that way, and then having that discussion. Now, that master schedule time could have been once a week, or it could be more often than that, and it could be some kids receiving intervention in other subject areas too, like reading. Now, fast forward to our remote instruction time, and we adopted an asynchronous model. Now, that means that we have some synchronous learning experiences, but that means that we're not all completely synchronous all the time. So that's how we can provide some small group instruction. So we have teachers who have broken their classes up into small groups, and they pull those kids at certain times, and they say, I need you to get on Zoom or whatever at this specific time with me, or with Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, and they work on their goal. We also know that kids can work independently and learn math, even though I'm not the one talking. So in the school day or in the time that we have to do math, I may pull a small group and work with them on this during class or during some other time. The key really is that I'm flexible and I targeted specific, but also I'm flexible and I can provide that time. In a sense, I would say it's a lot easier than at the middle school where we have like a bell schedule and we're in and out. But again, if we look at being flexible, a long time ago with RTI, when we were first learning about response to intervention, things seemed really rigid, at least from my perspective. Like there were resources that were off limits and only for RTI, and tier 2 and tier 3 had to be done outside of the classroom, and this and that, like everything seemed real rigid. Well, now we know like it doesn't have to be that way. So that's how we find the time to provide the intervention. We also know that tier 1 instruction, that first level of high quality instruction, the better we do at that, the less kids are going to need that intervention. So we also have the real heavy push there of that tier 1 instruction being done really, really well.
Excellent.
Man, that was a long answer.
No, I was going to say, we also have another question from Carrie Tonk, and I have to say the fabulous Carrie Tonk. I happen to know her, so I happen to put in a little plug for Carrie, but she's got a really good question. She said, what screener do you give to a student with several years of unfinished learning? So an example she gave was, if there's a third grader that's working at first grade level, do you give that student a first grade screener then?
I let my teachers do what they want. When a teacher reaches out and says, hey, I'm interested in doing this because I'm trying to figure this out, what I want to know is, what is your aim? We do not level kids in math. It's not like reading. We don't say, oh, they're on the first grade math level or the second grade math level. Granted, much of their instruction could be coming on that level, and we may need that information for some type of intervention services, but that's so blatant, because I picture in my mind in DreamBox those little green bars and how you can go and work in the second grade and then work in the third grade, even though you haven't completed all of first grade. That's because of the vertical, I did this for the vertical alignment of math, but to answer your question, because they're ours, because there's not a window, because there's not a start and stop and a login, I coach the teachers who reach out and say, well, what do you need it for? I mean, they have access. They don't have to ask me permission for it, but I talk them through, like, are we looking to set a goal? Yeah, you might want to give this assessment, but let's not throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. Like, let's be real strategic and really try, because we don't want to give more than 1 or 2. Like, let's say, like, tell me about how the kid is progressing in math. What can the kid do versus not do? So on the whole list of goals, let me show this. On this whole list of goals, you can kind of scroll down and they're almost in sequential order. So I would say, well, can the kid do this? Can the kid do this? Can the kid do this? And then we're looking at, where does that stop? And say, I'm not sure the kid can do that. Well, then maybe that's the screener we need to give, rather than just going back 1 year, back 1 year, back 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So I have a tightly held system that has a lot of permission for the teachers.
Perfect.
A lot of empowerment. Are there any other questions? I think we've covered them all. I'm looking over the question list.
Oh, here's a question. Will the material be used primarily by interventionists or teachers? With the exception of some federal funded positions, we don't have interventionists. A few years ago, when we tightened up our belts, we don't even have reading interventionists. We have coaches, 1 per campus, and they work on helping the teachers strengthen their craft. Now, we do have some special funds on the campus level that are used for intervention, but I tell you what, they use this stuff and they love it. And we love it because it's tightly held. I don't know how often, well, A long time ago, we would always hire the same long-term sub or interventionist to tutor our kids, but never really measure the effectiveness of the material that person used or that person's instructional pedagogy. That's a long time ago. But now I'm like, let's hold this tight as well. If this person is part of our staff, permanent or not, then let's have it as part of our system. So teachers, for sure, use the resources.
Excellent.
And me with my children. They are 10 and 12 now. And I encourage all of you with children or nieces or nephews or anybody that you have rights to video, because it's the most raw, real, authentic content is watching a kid do that. It's amazing.
A side story, another one on my daughter, when she was on DreamBox, and even when she has used other things because of the district they're in, I have helped in the past, and I kept hands off as a former math teacher. And I heard my daughter like, "What does it want me to do?" And then I'm like, "Okay, Jason, just hold, self-discovery, independent learning," and then those magic words of, "Oh, that's what they want." And so that power of students discovering and trying and trial and error and getting it wrong, and it's excellent.
Absolutely.
I think we answered all the questions.
All right.
You've gotten several great jobs, Mary, and these are, thank you. This was amazing. And we definitely appreciate your time.
Just trying to help navigate a world where I've never been a teacher in a pandemic before. And I just try to provide ideas and resources or tools, whatever I can.
Some of us wonder if you ever sleep with the amount of work that you do and what you put out.
I do.
With a cup of coffee.
I drink a lot of coffee, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but I do sleep and I do take care of myself and fill up my own bucket. But it's that thing that when work is play and play is work, when you enjoy what you do, you're in a flow, then you just keep going. I used to worry that I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't know everything I'm doing, but I know that I have some knowledge to share and that I love the opportunity to do that.
Excellent. Well, we're 4 minutes till 2. It looks like we don't have any questions, and so I think we're good to wrap it up. Thank you again, Mary, for joining us and sharing K-5 math intervention. For joining, and thank you all attendees. Some have left and those still with us, thank you for joining. The recording will be sent out, and we'd love to answer additional questions if you have them, or help you if you're interested in looking at DreamBox as well. And we hope you have a great